just turned on this mic. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Pretty good? Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming out. I'm Emily Bennington, and I'm going to give you a very quick intro of myself. I am a writer and a career author. I write for U.S. News, Huffington Post, Forbes Woman, and I wrote a book called Effective Immediately with this gentleman over here, Skip Lineberg. Skip was my first boss when I graduated from college and entered the workforce, and he really took the time to teach me some things that I needed to know as a new grad. Like a lot of students entering the workforce, I thought that I knew a lot more than I actually did and found myself in trouble a little bit. And Skip was a great mentor, great boss, learned so much from him that I put it in a book, we put it in a book, and got it published. So this presentation is 7 things your first boss wants you to know on day one, and I got a little heavy-handed on one of the topics, so I actually cut one of them off. So it's now going to be 6 things your boss wants you to know on day one. So I mentioned that Skip was my first boss, and back in the day when my hair was blonde and I thought this outfit matched, we spent a lot of time together, and as I mentioned, we published the book that you have in front of you. Now, typically when Skip and I get together, we talk about how to succeed in your first job. And as I was putting this presentation together today, I started to think about what you're most concerned about. And I guess you're probably more concerned about actually getting the job, because to impress the boss, you have to actually have the job, right? Is that where you're most concerned about right now, is actually finding that job? How many of you are juniors? How many of you are seniors? How many of you are job hunting right now? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you can do that. First, the first thing that I want to talk to you about is success is a matter of managing your brand. Have any of you ever heard of personal branding? What is personal branding? Tell me what that is.
Getting yourself out there and what you do best, what your strengths are.
Absolutely. Getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there. Really, my definition of personal branding is being intentional about the impressions that you're making on others. And right now, at this period in your life, it is very, very important for you to do that. And I want to introduce you really quickly to Susan Coughlin. And Susan is somebody who I spoke to just last month in Chicago, and she didn't have a job. She wasn't really sure about how she was going to find a job, and she ended up taking some of what I'm going to talk to you about in this section, putting it to work, and she just got a job at JCPenney's, and they, in their corporate headquarters, doing exactly what she wanted to do. They got 2,000 applications for the job, picked 10, and she was one of them. And one of the reasons why she was one of them is because she took an active role in managing her online brand. So I think, how many of you are on Facebook? How many of you are on Twitter? How many of you are on LinkedIn? How many would say that you are strategically using your social media presence for the purpose of impressing a future employer? No? Okay, so if you're not doing that, then what you are is this. You are white noise. You are static, TV static, online, and who thinks that the internet doesn't have enough static anyway, right? So what I want to encourage you to do is to filter your online communications in a way that would be impressive to somebody who could potentially hire you. So the first thing that I want you to do that is to actually think about what it is that makes you different. What I'd like to challenge you to do is to think of your sentence. So what your sentence is that it's the one sentence description of what it is that you want when you graduate. So my sentence is that I am a career author who helps young professionals improve their leadership skills. So 80% of the information that I put online, I run through that filter. And I say, is this something that underscores the impression that I want to make in that area or not? And if it's not, then I typically don't post it. So 80% I run through that filter to strategically enhance my online brand. And then 20% I just kind of put up as like fun stuff so people know that I'm actually a person. Does that make sense to you guys? So I want you to think about what it is that you're studying, the industry that you're in. Think of the sentence. It could just be, I'm a rock star grad in marketing, okay? So what that means is that you're now looking for marketing articles within your industry, and that's the type of information that you're going to post online. So every single sort of cool opportunity that I've ever had, from media appearances to writing for the Huffington Post and whatnot, all started because I managed my online brand. So that when I pitched myself for something, just as you pitch yourself for a job, when I pitched myself for something, they said, okay, well, I'm buying this pitch, so let me do some research on this person. So they did research on me, and what they found was that I was backing up the impressions that I wanted them to have of me online. That's how this works. Employers are researching you, so it's the exact same thing. So let's talk about how you can stand out. What is the #1 way that you can stand out as a job seeker today? And I'm talking online. I'm not talking offline. Yes? Good resume. But even further than that, what can you do? When employers Google you, and they are, what can you do to make sure that they have a positive impression of you that you can 100% control?
Make sure nothing negative comes up when they Google you.
Make sure nothing negative comes up, but you can also start a blog. Now, this sounds like it's going to be really, really tough to do, but it's actually not. If you go to WordPress.com, you can set up a blog for yourself in like 10 minutes. And what you do is you create a blog for yourself that you post regularly 2 or 3 times a week, 300 words. It's not a huge time commitment, where you just talk about what you're learning, the impressions that you have of the colleagues that you have, the problems that you're solving together, that sort of thing. If you put this information up online, when a potential employer searches for you, that's what they're going to find. So if they're evaluating you against another candidate, and you have all of this great information, all this rich information about what you're learning and what you're doing online that reinforces the impression that you want to make, and this other candidate doesn't, guess who's going to get that job? You are, because you took the time to actively manage your brand online. So another cool thing that a blog does is that it actually gives you one place for all of your social media profiles to be found. So right now, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, if you're on LinkedIn, you're trusting that an employer would go and look at all of those different sites to find you. The blog could actually become the hub of your online brand, the one-stop shop where the employer could go to find out where you are on all those other sites. So they don't have to, it makes it easier for them, and the easier that you can make it for them, the better. So how many of you are on LinkedIn again? Okay, how many of you are not on LinkedIn? How many of you are like, what is LinkedIn? Okay, LinkedIn is the place where it's your place where you have your online resume. They call it like Facebook in a suit. So if you're not on LinkedIn and you're job searching, then you need to be on LinkedIn. And I'm going to tell you just really quickly why. 70% of jobs today are found through referrals. So what LinkedIn does is it tells you, you not only have like on Facebook where you have like the people that you're connected to that are in your inner circle, with LinkedIn, that circle expands. So now you're connected to people that your connections are connected to and beyond. And you want to talk about how easier it is to find a job today. You need to know as many people as you possibly can, and LinkedIn is the place where you can make those connections to get you employed. So it's where you post your online resume, LinkedIn. So I really don't have a whole lot of time to kind of go through all of these things, but I will say afterwards, if you have questions for me on any of the social media and anything that we're talking about today. But just really quickly, your goal on LinkedIn is to have a 100% complete LinkedIn profile. And one of the reasons why you want a 100% complete LinkedIn profile is because when you have a profile that's complete, you become more searchable. So when you have all of the fields filled out in LinkedIn, when recruiters are searching for people to fill positions, you have a higher chance of going to the top. So if you were in marketing, you would want to make sure that all of the fields that you fill out here on your LinkedIn profile have marketing repeated over and over and over again, so that when a recruiter searches for marketing in LinkedIn, looking for people who are looking for jobs in marketing, you show up at the top. That's how this
Emily,
works.
you might want to point out the indicator of completeness on there so they can follow along as they're making progress.
Yeah, so up here in the right, they have LinkedIn gives you a nice little bar that tells you how complete your profile is or how incomplete it is. And the more that this is what it takes to have a 100% complete LinkedIn profile. So the more of this you do, the higher that bar goes. And when you have a 100% complete LinkedIn profile, that's when you're most able to be found for potential employers. So here's just a real quick overview of everything that you can do on LinkedIn. You can prepare for meetings, which is interviews. So for example, if you know that you're interviewing with a company and you know who your interviewer is going to be, there's a job fair going on here, right? So what you could do is you could look up the companies who are in that job fair on LinkedIn, find out who their local representatives are, and if they have a LinkedIn profile, then you could study up on them a little bit. And how much of job interviews really comes down to rapport between people. So if you have studied their profile on LinkedIn, you're able to sit down and say things like, I see that you're a former UC grad yourself, or I see that you went to Marshall, or I see that you really like Lean Six Sigma, the book, right? So the more information that you have about the people that are interviewing you in advance, the more you're going to be able to sit down and look like a rock star candidate because you've done your homework. So this is the type of things that you can do on LinkedIn. Who's on Twitter? Who's like, what's Twitter? Okay. Twitter is, and I'm sorry that I'm like kind of rapidly kind of going through these, but I really want to give you guys kind of a spoonful of why you should be on these sites so that if you want to research it further or talk to me, then I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. The difference, the reason why you want to be on Twitter, and one thing that I hear a lot is, I'm on Facebook, why do I need to be on Twitter? If you're job hunting, one of the reasons why you need to be on Twitter is because with Facebook, you really only are following people that are in your inner circle, people that you know. The cool thing about Twitter is that it gives you the opportunity to follow people that you don't know. So that's one of the key differences. And one of the reasons why it's important is because when it's almost like a little like LinkedIn, where you can do research on people and you don't actually have to have them accept you as a friend to do that. So that's one of the reasons why Twitter is really important. It's another reason why it's good for you to be on there is that, again, employers are Googling you, so you want to be in control of what they're finding. So Twitter also has very high search engine optimization, so that when they search you, if you have a Twitter profile, it pops up at the top, and that's good for you. You want that. So that, again, you're able to put out information that's going to help you strategically manage your online brand and help you find that job. Another reason why you want to be on Twitter is because companies aren't advertising their open positions as much as they used to. And the reason why is because it's very expensive for them to do that. And companies are obviously, we're coming slightly out of a recession. They're running very lean and mean. So how they're advertising open opportunities is as cheaply as possible. And Twitter right now is free. So what you're seeing here is a lot of companies that have job openings that they're putting on Twitter that 10, 15 years ago you would have found in the paper. You're not going to find these jobs in the paper anymore. You're going to find them on Twitter, which is another reason why you need to be there. You can't apply for job opportunities that you don't know about. So you have to be on Twitter. You have to at least give yourself a shot at those opportunities by being in the game. And there's one last one that I want to talk to you about, and that's Google+. Anybody heard of Google+? It's yet another social network. But I want to tell you one reason why you might want to consider being on Google+. Very similar. You would be posting a lot of the same information on Google+ that you would be on Twitter. So again, It's not a whole lot of time because you're kind of repeating some information, but the reason why you want to be on Google Plus is because it's Google, so it affects your search. Again, this is all about managing your online brand so that you can show up highly in a search under your name. Employers will be searching for you. So you can show up highly on the search and control what possible employers will be finding. So that's seriously, I taught like a whole class on that at UC in the master's program. That is a 5-minute description. Did anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so then we'll move on to the second one. Yes?
I'm not familiar with Twitter, but I do not have a Twitter account. But you know how I can tell you like some private, because people looking at your profile stuff? Your Twitter account, if someone else has a Twitter account, can they see everything you put?
Yes.
Should you go unprivate or should you go private?
You can go private. I would discourage you from going private because, again, the whole purpose of doing this is to put yourself out there so that an employer can find out about you when they're researching you to possibly hire you. So you can go private, but I don't recommend it. So the next thing that I want to talk about in terms of finding a job is to think differently. And I think that a lot of people, when they approach their job search, they typically do they go onto the sites like Monster, they go onto Career Builder, and just look to see what jobs are available. I want you to kind of flip the script on that a little bit and create a list of your top 5 or top 10 employers, and then actually seek opportunities where you can come to them. And one of the ways that you can do this creatively is by maximizing your presence online. So you can have a LinkedIn profile, that's your online resume, or you can actually create a mini website where you have your resume on there. Anybody code? Anybody know people who code? Find somebody who can do this for you. This is one example. Christine Hall, this is like a 2-page website. It's called hirechristine.com. If you want to see somebody who did this well, go to that site and take a look at what she did. Because she, in a market where it's really tough to find a job, she had multiple job offers because she was creative in the way that she approached it. So if you're not kind of into this, there's another thing that I want to talk to you about, and that is creating a resume that is in PowerPoint. So I think a lot of you we all create resumes that are in Microsoft Word, and then we send them to employers. One way to think differently and stand out is to create a resume that's in PowerPoint. And I'll show you a little bit about how a couple people have done this. This is a girl who applied for a job at NYU, so this was her cover letter. Again, this is all created in PowerPoint. So this would be equivalent to her cover letter. She says, I'm presenting to you to let you know that I want to be applying for this job. So they asked for a specific experience in marketing, PR, and advertising. So rather than, we've all seen in Microsoft Word, we say, yeah, I've got experience doing this. She's actually able to visually show the things that she's worked on in those fields. So this is pretty impressive. And they asked for specific skills and specific programs, and she's able to show it this way. And I think she had about 10 slides in this total. I've only showed you 3 or 4 of them, but you can kind of get the idea of how this works. Here's another one. This, again, totally created in PowerPoint. This is a guy by the name of Jesse Desjardins, and this is his cover slide. Again, all of this information that you would find in the top part of a resume, he's able to put it in PowerPoint. And again, rather than just saying, I went to Ryerson, he actually is able to show a picture of the school. Here's some examples of projects that he's worked on. And then that's his closing slide. So his slide shows, I'd say, about 10 or 15 slides, too. I've only shown you a couple of them. But do you see, as an employer, if you're looking at this and you're evaluating candidates, if somebody came to the table, i.e. you, with this strong PowerPoint resume, a strong online presence, where you've clearly taken the time to manage the information that you're putting online strategically to reinforce the job that you want to get in the industry that you want, can you see where you would stand out? This is exactly what Susan did. I mentioned Susan at the beginning. This is exactly what Susan did to get that opportunity that she got at JCPenney's corporate headquarters. So, yes?
About
like animation and music.
No, no. Just be simple, and here's why. I mean, you can use animation and music, but one of the reasons why I want to encourage you to be simple is because when you create your PowerPoint resume, I would encourage you to put it up on a site called slideshare.net. And when you have animations, this won't work. The reason why you want to put them up on SlideShare is because if you created a PowerPoint resume, we all know how big PowerPoint files can get. They can get up to like 20 megs. You don't want to send a potential employer a 20 meg file. Not good. You want to send them a link. So you can say, I'm so-and-so, I'm applying for da-da-da, and here's a link to my online resume. Here's a link to my LinkedIn profile. Here's a link to my online resume. And that's why you want to do it that way. Okay? Slideshare.net. Now I'm going to turn it over to Skip.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Just a quick sound check. Good, we're good. So good morning. I am really thrilled to be with you all this morning to talk about your success on your first job in your career. And I had the pleasure of working with Emily, as she mentioned before, and after having heard her speak for the last 15 or 20 minutes, it's easy to see how easy it was for me to recognize the potential in her at a very young age. She's brilliant, obviously. I want to shift the focus just a little bit from finding a job and using some of the social media tactics to attract an employer to thinking about your first job. And we're going to probably spend the rest of our time with you this morning talking about how to succeed on your first job. So one of the points of connection right off the bat is that Emily was talking about being successful in an interview setting is all about rapport. So what I want to talk to you about is being successful relating to your first boss. It's very analogous, but instead of being a 30-minute episode, it's going to be months and months or years of relating to that person. And it is about relating or rapport. It's a key element of the success. And the first thing that most people haven't thought about is that you don't know what your first boss is going to be, who they're going to be, or what they're going to be like. Is it going to be this person? What if that's your first boss? Some of you think, hey, that's great, we can handle that. Some of you think, oh my gosh, looks pretty grouchy. Maybe this is your first boss. Young guy, cheerful, right? Maybe approachable, I don't know. Or it could be her. Or it could be him. So I want to tell you, first of all, that bosses are different. They're as different as night and day. No two are the same. And they're different in terms of communication style, personality, their appearance, their attitude. Some are more focused on structure and procedure. And you see this with your professors here at UC, right? Different. They're greatly different. Think about it. Some of them have an open door policy. Here are my office hours, and you can walk right in. My door's always open. Some say that, right? Others are very procedural or structural. Okay, here are my office hours, and you need to schedule with me at least 7 days in advance. You need to confirm the appointment via email, and if you miss it, I'll never meet with you again. I'm exaggerating, but there are differences, right? Same with bosses. Communication style. Some of your bosses are going to want more written communication. Some people are going to want you to walk in and talk about a problem. Some are going to want you to bring a report in to show what you've thought about and what problem solving you've done before you get there. It's different as night and day. So I want to share with you a story about a boss that I had. This was my second job. I was in my late 20s, and I was working for a former governor across the river at the Capitol in the Economic Development Division, which was part of the Department of Commerce. And we had a new Commerce Secretary. And one of our first meetings as a staff with the Commerce Secretary, his name was John, and he said, we didn't know John very well yet. John said, I want all of our development representatives to write at least 10 letters a day. We should be sending out 10 letters a day per person. So we took that literal, wouldn't you have? So for the next period of time, each of us spent an inordinate amount of time writing these sales-type letters to potential investors who would come and build factories and warehouses and shops and operations and offices here in West Virginia. So fast forward, play that track out, fast forward about 2 weeks, and we have another staff meeting. And the still new Cabinet Secretary, John, is upset because no one's getting out of the office anymore, going out to call on companies, and our postage costs are through the roof. So what we discovered is that John was the type of leader, the type of manager who liked to brainstorm with you. This is a consultative type personality. They like to bounce ideas off. They want to hear your input. They want to back and forth. But the mistake you can make is not knowing that you don't take that person literally. You listen to what they say, you process it, you come back with some ideas, and then you check for verification. John, do you want us each to write 10 letters per day? And if we had checked with him in that fashion, he would have said, oh my gosh, no, I'm just throwing that out there to hear what you all would say in reaction. So bosses are just, they're as different as can be. And here are some of the tips that we would have for you to be successful managing upward in the organization or relating effectively to a boss. We talked about different communication styles, different expectations. Don't expect your boss to spoon feed you, okay? Bosses want to see people who are take charge, proactive, thinkers, doers, and that's not an absolute. Some bosses will want more control, but others, by and large, want you to be a self-starter. Make the most out of every action. What do we mean by that? That's take each opportunity that you have with your boss as an opportunity to learn, as an opportunity to connect more deeply with that person. When you are in your first job, your first boss, if we look at universal statistics, is 40 times busier than you are. So when you get a 5-minute one-on-one with that boss, think about the rarity of that occasion and how infrequently that's going to happen and how much you need to make the most out of that, which is being prepared, having the resource materials that he or she might ask for, having questions written in the side margin of your notepad so that when they say, all right, do you have any questions about this assignment, you have those ready and you seem prepared and thoughtful. Does that make sense? And then be open to coaching and mentoring. If we had much more time, we could spend a good hour on this topic of finding a mentor, relating with a mentor. But this is someone who may or may not be your manager or your supervisor. A mentor is someone who cares about you and is invested in your success. It could be a peer colleague. It could be a manager from a different division or a different department. But this is someone who you click with, who wants to see you succeed and will spend the time to teach you, to coach you on the ins and outs, to share lessons and stories with you like we're doing this morning, just because they want to see you be successful. And it's incredibly rare, but if you find a mentor, if you're lucky enough to find one, this will be a big success factor in your career. I'm going to turn it back over to Emily, and we're going to talk more about succeeding on your first job from a slightly different angle.
Sure, thanks, Skip. I think a lot of new professionals, when you think about what it's going to take to succeed in the workforce, a lot of people think that it's this grand thing, that you're going to come in and you're going to announce to everybody that you're there and that you're going to have success through these home runs immediately. And that's really not how it works out. So I think if you can enter the workforce understanding that your success comes from what we call the art of the incremental edge. And that means basically that small acts make a big difference. Anybody know who this is?
Michael Phelps.
Michael Phelps. What is so gosh darn special about Michael Phelps?
More gold medals.
Yep. He has 8 Olympic gold medals, which is a world record. And everybody knows that about Michael Phelps, but what you may not know about Michael Phelps is that he got one of those gold medals by 7/10 of a second. 7/10 of a second was the only thing that separated him between achieving this world-class, history-breaking record and not getting it. And so one of the things that, one of the reasons why I bring Michael Phelps up is because Skip and I have talked about this a lot. What if he just trained just a little bit more every single day than his competitor? What if he just swam 5 more laps a day than his competitor did? It's those little things that add up so that when on the day of the performance that you're ready. So how does this translate into what you do at work? Little things make a big difference. This is what Skip and I like to call Gene Kelly dance steps. And anybody ever heard of Gene Kelly?
Google him later.
Google him later. What is so special about Gene Kelly is that in the golden age of Hollywood, he wasn't the best singer and he wasn't the best dancer, but he dominated his industry because he had all of these little things that he did right that added up to make him appear to be the best dancer. So we say that he had the perfect crease of his pants, he had the perfect look to the camera, the perfect top hat, the cane, whatever. All of those little things that he did made up for the fact that he wasn't the best singer and he wasn't the best dancer. So how do you apply this to what you do at work? We call these abilities. These are the little things that make a big deal when you're building your impression with your boss and your colleagues. So it's things like punctuality, showing up at work on time. 5 minutes late is still 5 minutes late, right? 5 minutes late is 5 minutes late, so be early. Likability, do your colleagues like you? Accountability, dependability, reliability, which is really all the same way of saying, do you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it? If you want to damage your reputation very quickly, don't do something that you promised to do or turn it in late, right? That's one of the quickest ways to damage your reputation at work. Humility. Do you come into the workforce eager to learn, or do you come in wanting your supervisor's job from day one? And visibility. I know Skip has seen this in his jobs where some new professionals actually make it their job to figure out the most about the IM features on their computer or to hide underneath behind their computer, thinking that staying below the radar is the way to get ahead. It's absolutely not. You need to be seen. So walk around your office. And all of the abilities for me really roll up into the ultimate ability, which is credibility. When you are when you're on the docket to potentially get a new assignment or be in charge of a team, right, for your first time, that won't happen to you unless you have that ultimate ability, which is credibility. So little things matter a lot in the office. Another thing that you can do as far as a little thing that makes a big difference is what we call closing the loop. And a lot of people don't do this very well. Sorry about that C. I'm converting this from a PowerPoint to a Mac, so that C got cut off.
Its loop's not closed.
Its loop isn't closed, which is actually probably a perfect segue. I think a lot of times this is one mistake that new employees make that I hear from employers over and over and over again. And it's that when you are assigned a task and you complete the task, or you're running late on completing the task, close the loop with your boss and let them know that. A lot of times I think if you're working on something, you assume that your boss knows that you're working on it. If you haven't closed the loop with your boss, they assume you're not working on it.
Emily,
I'm sorry,
could we go back to the 40 times busier than you are?
Yeah.
And put that in that perspective.
Yeah.
Filter it through that ratio.
Just, again, goes back to understanding that your boss is 40 times busier than you are. So the easier that you can make things for them, the better. And one of the best ways that you can make things easy on your boss, this is if you could read one chapter in Effective Immediately and implement one thing out of the 88 pieces of advice that we offer in that book, this is the one. And it's the Friday memo. Every single week, you should send your boss a bulleted email that outlines your accomplishments for that week, the areas where you need input, which is where you're holding on something because you need more information, and your goals for the week ahead. That is the single best thing that you can do to establish yourself as a rock star from day one, and it doesn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes. So Friday memo. Dog-ear that page in your book. Did you have anything to add on Friday memo, Skip?
Well, I do, that it's on page 48 and 49 in the book. And on the way here, I have 3 people who I'm their boss, quote-unquote boss, but who work for me, and 2 of the 3 on the way here sent me their Friday memo on email. And the last thing I have to do when I get back to close out my week is to send my boss my Friday memo for the week, to send that summary and close the loop and be accountable and be visible, and inform my boss and keep him in the loop as to what we accomplished this week, what the holdups or obstacles are, and what's ahead for the next couple weeks.
I think what you'll find when you enter the workforce, and maybe you've seen this in your internships already, is that 9 times out of 10, what is judged as poor performance really came down at one point to a miscommunication. So if you can send a Friday memo to your boss every single week, then it keeps them up to date on what you're doing, and you won't have those communication issues that could get you into trouble later.
Good point. So if part of your success on your first job is relating well to your boss, another obvious big area for you to succeed and excel would be in being part of a team. Because, and I know enough about the curriculum and the learning approach here at UC to know that you guys are involved in lots of team projects. Is that right? If you just show of hands, if you have a team project going on in any class right now, practically 100% of the students in the room. And that's fantastic, because in work, on your first job, all work is projects. And most projects, I would say 95% of projects are team projects. So the stuff that you're learning about teams is hugely important. And if you would focus especially on the team dynamics part of that learning, as to how does the team come together? How well does it function? Haven't we all been on teams that just stink and don't get anything done and they kind of fall apart and someone's left holding the bag, right? And then probably less frequently, which is sad, but less frequently, we're on a team that just has this incredible chemistry and everyone feels like they're contributing and we get so much done and it feels like effortless, and you kind of feel like there's this upward energy that causes everybody to be better than they are individually. And those are the really cool moments, aren't they? So I want you to think about teams for a moment and ask yourself if you are, if you know, or maybe you are, the kid who seems, these are different team personalities. There's that person who seems so quiet but is great with numbers, crunching numbers and Excel spreadsheets. Anybody know anybody like that? Anybody that person who's the number cruncher? What about the person who always answers first and can communicate a great question or says exactly what was on your mind? There's that person who's the great communicator. Another personality of a team member might be that person who has the knack for getting people organized, keeping them organized. Is the person who's going to create the schedule and is going to remind people about due dates, and is that real organizational type personality. Well, guess which is the most important person to have on your team? All you need them all. You need a blend. It was. You know what, though? If I had to pick one, I would agree with you. So let's just look at a visual. You know, in the academic world, most of your success comes down to you, to some extent some teams. But when you get into your first job, it's this 3-part success mix. There's 3 parts of the pie. How many of I want to jump ahead, and we can come back to that. But I want to talk about whitewater rafting. How many have ever gone whitewater rafting? As you look up there in the boat, in the raft, I'm going to tell you what's not the answer. It's not the rafting guide, okay? Who has the most important job in the raft in this team project, which is getting down the river without dying? Who has the most important job in the raft? Let's break it down a little bit. The people up front basically have the fun ride. They get the thrills and the glory. They get to see everything first. Their view is not obstructed by anything. They can see the whole of what's going on. They can spot where the danger is, and they can scream first because they see what's coming. And they get the biggest bounce because they're out there on the end of the raft. So that's a really fun place to be. And frankly, they don't have a lot of work to do. That's the best seat, really. You might get thrown out, but you're going to have the most fun. So if that matches your personality, be up front. The rafting guide is without question truly the most important job, because they know where to go, where not to go, and how to save someone's life, and how to throw the rope to get you back in the boat if you should fall out. But aside from that person, the people who have the most important job are the ones in the back. What they do is they propel the raft forward, they steer, they do all the work, their view's blocked, And anytime the raft tends to get bent up like a taco, they get smashed in the face with the helmet of the person that's sitting in front of them. And so again, the front part, you don't get your face bashed in, but back here you do, and you've got to do all the work, and you're responsible for getting the raft through the rapids. So the people in the back don't have the glory or the glamour. They're doing all the work, but that's the most important job. If they don't steer and they don't paddle really hard at the right time, or they don't pull on the raft, the paddle to make the raft go one way or another, everybody gets wet, and possibly worse than that. Now, here's the thing, is that if you've ever taken a rafting trip, guess what? You don't sit up front all day. You don't get to be that person that has the glory all the time. You'll go for 45 minutes. The rafting guide will take the raft over to shore. You'll jump out, maybe have a snack. You get back in the boat, and they encourage you to change seats, right? So if you were lazy and you did a horrible job back here when you had the really tough, important work, and then you're moving up front, guess what the people who are up there are going to do when they're back here? They're going to let you down. So as you move through those different jobs, it's important that you devote yourself to the success of the team at each and every station. When you get up here to the front of the raft and you get to have the glory, you're going to have a great time, and you're not going to crash, and you're not going to get tossed out of the boat. So it's really about, we'll back up a little bit. My point with all of this is that leadership should more importantly, more properly be talked about followership, because it all comes back around. And it's important, especially as a young professional and as you're on your first job, to distinguish yourself as a great follower, as someone who has all those abilities that we talked about, as someone who communicates well, someone who's humble, someone who can interact with other team members and can play a variety of roles and is not always looking for the glory all the time. That's being a great follower. So then when it's your chance to be a great leader, those other people who are on your team are going to respect you, and they're going to do the same for you. Does that make sense?
This was, just if I can interject, Skip,
yeah, please,
the single biggest mistake that I made when I entered the workforce is that I came into my job hoping, thinking, feeling like I deserved a leadership position when I really wasn't ready for it and I wasn't being a great follower, so that when the time came and I actually got a leadership position, I didn't have a whole lot of followers because I had been such a poor follower myself. The single biggest mistake that I made. So I just wanted to underscore what Skip was saying, because I've been through it and I got bounced out of the boat. Just saying.
She made up for it well, and she made up for it quickly. But
now I tell others.
So we've given you a couple things to focus on. The book is full of these lessons, and I encourage you to read the book. But if you follow the advice in the book and you are mindful of your abilities and you relate well to your boss and you're a great team player, you will become a leader, and you will become someone who inspires others. And that, folks, is where the magic happens. When you're an inspirational leader, you can get anything done in any organization. You can practically name your salary, and you can have any job that you want to have. That is the thing to aspire to, is to become known and distinguished and proven as an inspirational leader. And we wanted to give you sort of a metaphor for that inspirational leader, and it's going to take time. This is not something that's going to happen on your first job. It's probably not going to happen for the first decade that you're in the workforce. Maybe you'll prove me wrong, and I hope you do. But to be an inspirational leader, you should remember this metaphor that we're going to show you. And let me pull it out, and we'll talk a bit about it. The inspirational leader is like this object that I have here in my hand. Who can tell me what I'm holding? The disco ball, right? How might a disco ball be like a great inspirational leader? Any thoughts? So would you say that again?
It reflects back what is going on.
Reflects back what is going on around them. And if you would, relate that to a person. And how would an inspirational leader utilize that?
An inspirational leader would not take all of the glory himself.
Absolutely.
Help build up.
Did you all hear what she said? What I want to say is that an inspirational leader, just to rephrase this, you got it exactly right, always reflects the credit back to the others on the team. So In this case, the great leader deflects credit and defers that to the other members on the team. Have you ever seen if you're a sports fan, you see the great playoff victory and they interview the hero, whether it's maybe the quarterback from the winning team, and the one who's not the inspirational leader will say, yeah, I had a great game, and this is probably the greatest game of my life, and I'm unstoppable from here on out. How arrogant is that, right? The great leader, the Joe Montana, the Tom Brady, says, yeah, the team had a great game, completely disregards the question about how did you play, what do you think about your performance today. The team had a great game. We've never worked better together. My offensive line protected me today. I felt like I had the confidence to do anything out there because our team was performing so well. Never mentions himself. That's like a disco ball reflecting or deflecting the energy and projecting it back into the environment. So a great leader, the great inspirational leader, first of all, like the disco ball, is always visible. You never have to look for him. When crisis or trouble or adversity hits, you just look up, the disco ball is always there. The inspirational leader can always be found. They don't hide from trouble. Likewise, the disco ball and the inspirational leader always remain on high. They always take the high position. They always look for the good. They always look for the high integrity solution to whatever situation. Always remains on high. Like the disco ball, the great inspirational leader is always moving. The disco ball is always rotating, isn't it? Same with an inspirational leader. Always moving forward, always forging progress. And the disco ball, like an inspirational leader, always enriches the environment around them. So I'll leave you with this metaphor. I want you to take that with you. And the next time you see a disco ball or a great leader, connect those two thoughts. And I just want to say that I wish you the most success in your career and finding a job and on your first job. And I hope that our book will propel you and accelerate you down that success path wherever you go.
And my hope for you is that you are lucky enough in your first job to have a boss who is as good for you as Skip was for me, because truly it was a blessing to have had a boss who would stop and actually take the time to coach and teach. It's a very rare thing, and it's one of the reasons why, because he was so good at it, is one of the reasons why I was inspired to coach and teach others. So it really kind of what goes around comes around, and you never know, how that's going to play out in your life. But if you find a boss who's willing to be a mentor to you, hold on tight and don't let them go. Does anybody have any questions for us? I think we've got about maybe 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and we talk a lot and we have stuff to say and we kind of think we know what you might be interested in, but this is the good part here. Now you ask what you really need to know. What are you struggling with? What fears do you have about the situation of finding a job or being on the first job, about managers or communication or anything? Here we are. Our time is yours.
And if you don't want to ask it now, this is how you can get in touch with us.
Right.
I'm on Facebook at Emily Bennington College to Career. For those of you that are on Twitter and for those of you that are going to join Twitter after what you learned today, I'm at Emily Bennington and Skip is at Lineberg. And if you'd like to email us, my email address is emily@emilybennington.com and Skip's is slinberg@spilmanlaw.com. Did we cover it all, or do you guys have any questions?
I know they do.
You are hungry, right? I know it's like 12:45.
Some of them have tests today at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, there's a British literature test going on, 2 o'clock. Well, then I'll leave you with this. If you were, I really wanted to talk a lot about managing your personal brand, and I could go equally as long talking about how you can do that offline as well. But just be intentional about the impressions that you're making on others. Be really thoughtful in the way that you do that, both online and off. And it's something that it's never too early. So just if you think that you're not job hunting right now, so you may feel like you don't need to pay attention to what you're doing online, it's never too early to build that strong impression for yourself. So, All right, well, if you guys don't have any questions, we'll let you go. Thanks so much for coming out. Really appreciate it.